Richard. Richard is. Oh, sorry, Richard. Patty, Andrew, and Bruce.
Have our own mics tonight. That's nice.
You're here, Richard. You
Stealing
speak
mine
first.
yesterday.
Actually, I meant to do it a couple times for speaking.
Well, Paul was sort of, well, he was stealing and I really should take it back. What are you going to do, right? Matt's doing photos. Just ask Isabella how hard it is to get a picture with my eyes open.
That's a good. He's back there. He's back there. Yeah. Okay, I think we're going to get started to try and stay on schedule here because we have two debates to do this evening. So I'll just let everybody get their seats as we settle in. I'll just go over the format as people are taking their seats. So good evening. My name is Chisholm Potier. I'm a director with the Thunder Bay Chamber of Commerce. And welcome to our candidates forum for Thunder Bay Superior North and Thunder Bay Rainy River. So we'll do Superior North at 6, and we're going to do Rainy River at 7. So we want to thank Net News Ledger for live streaming the event tonight. And I have a special request from Net News Ledger that if you have cell phones, please put them on vibrate so it doesn't interfere with the feed and the broadcast. So thanks also for the support from the Valhalla Inn and Maverick Entertainment Group. So the issues discussed here tonight affect business in our community, and it is important that you have an opportunity to hear the views of the candidates and their parties in order to make an informed decision on Election Day, October 19th. If you're using social media to share tonight's debate, please use the hashtag #ChamberDebate. The order of speaking has been determined by draw. It'll go from my immediate right to my far right. Questions will rotate from my right to my far right with each question, and each candidate will have 1 minute to respond to questions, and there's a timer back there that will guide them on that, after which a debate between all candidates will be held for 2 minutes. And then candidates will be notified when there are 10 seconds remaining in their initial response, and the microphone will be shut off when time runs out. We're not going to be totally hard and fast with that, but we would ask you to kind of respect the parameters of the time since we're trying to get 2 debates in here. So a reminder that all candidates have agreed to be respectful of each other, to not engage in name calling, and to not interrupt each other when speaking. My role as moderator is to ensure that everyone has a chance to make their points. And our first debate, of course, as I mentioned, is with the candidates for the Thunder Bay Superior North riding. I'll just introduce them. There's from my immediate right, Richard Harvey, Conservative Party, Patty Hadju, Liberal Party, Andrew Folds, New Democratic Party, and Bruce Heyer, Green Party. So the random draw has determined that Richard will speak first, and he'll have 1 minute to do an opening statement, and that'll be followed by the opening statements from the 3 other candidates, and then we'll get to questions and debate. Go ahead, Richard.
Thank you very much. Thank you for coming out tonight. Most of you already know me.
you know me as mayor of Nipigon. 9 years ago, in the first 3 months of my term as mayor, we lost our entire industrial tax base. It was truly trial by fire. Difficult times. So what did we do? We entered into unprecedented infrastructure renewal. At the same time, we avoided running deficits. We carried no external debt. We actually ran surpluses. And all of this we did while lowering taxes. Similarly, the Conservative Party of Canada balanced its budget in 2014, 2015 with a small surplus. And all of this while undertaking unprecedented infrastructure renewal and lowering taxes. Budgets don't balance themselves. I know that, you know that. So I want to be your voice in Ottawa. It's about the economy. Thank you.
Thank you, Richard. With 2 seconds to spare, nicely done. And our next speaker is Patty Hadju for the Liberal Party.
I'm Patty Haidu.
Oops.
You may know me as the executive director of Shelter House, an award-winning, multi-million-dollar, unionized, nonprofit organization recognized under my leadership for its excellence by this very Chamber of Commerce. This election is about change, but what kind of change do we need? Tonight, you will hear guys with long track records of unsuccessful policy-making promises things that they can't deliver. The Liberal Party is the only party offering realistic, pragmatic, and immediate relief for the severe economic distress and infrastructure deficit that we in the North have felt for decades. Our three-point plan focuses on investment. Investment in infrastructure and jobs, investment in middle-class families, and investment in communities. We must always remember that economic growth is not just about prosperity. It's about building a country that gives everyone a real and fair chance to succeed. It's time for honest and transparent leadership. It's time for the politics of collaboration.
Thank you, and I'm sorry for the mispronunciation, Ms. Haidu. Andrew from the New Democratic Party.
Thank you very much for inviting me here today. First, I would like to acknowledge our presence today on the traditional territory of the Fort William First Nation. For the last 9 years, I have served as a city councillor. I chair the Earth Care Advisory Committee. I'm a member of DSAB, the Waterfront BIA, and the Lakehead Conservation Authority. You know my record. I stand up for what I and my constituents believe. Job creation, tax fairness, First Nations, childcare, pensions, veterans, healthcare, foreign policy are all top-of-mind issues for voters in this election. But what underlines all of these issues is trust in our government. For the first time in our history, we are facing serious challenge to the very nature of our democracy and a threat to our personal rights and freedoms that define us as a nation. Bill C-51, voter suppression, muzzling of scientists, gutting of the census. The NDP has stood alone, fully in defense of free and open democracy and personal freedoms. I look forward to our further discussion tonight. Thank you.
Speaker is Bruce Heyer from the Green Party.
Thank you. For the last 7 years, I've been your member of parliament for Thunder Bay Superior North. I'm one of the hardest working MPs in the House of Commons, including the Maclean's poll by my MP peers called me one of the top 3 MPs in terms of representing constituents. I've introduced more legislation to the House of Commons than all of the previous MPs from Thunder Bay Superior North combined. 4 of the more notable ones of those are C-311, the climate change bill, the only climate change bill ever to pass the House of Commons, the Cell Phone Freedom Act, the Made in Canada Act, which would require 50% content and would help Bombardier. And this last June, you may have noticed, I passed Bill C-61 through the House of Commons, unanimously creating the National Marine Conservation Area. So in addition to being a small business person, I've done a lot of other careers. I have wildlife experience, and I'm looking forward to this debate. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. So our first question, and we'll go in the same order, and everybody will have a minute to respond, but I'll direct the first question to Richard Harvey from the Conservative Party, and you'll have 1 minute. Under the Canadian system, the wishes of local constituents can sometimes take a back seat to the positions and policies of the political party and its leader. So what is your approach to finding the balance between these two masters in the role of as Member of Parliament?
Thank you very much for that question. One of the things that I think is really important to recognize, and that is that we are elected to represent the people of Thunder Bay Superior North. And certain people will tell you that all of the parties have all the votes are whipped. The reality is that the Conservative Party actually has in its policy, its policy states that members of Parliament are free to represent their constituents and their conscience. Number one commitment I make is to represent the constituents and conscience. Obviously, we're with a party. The reason I'm with the Conservative Party is I truly do believe that the Conservative Party of Canada best represents the hardworking people of Thunder Bay Superior North. The Conservative Party of Canada is the party that we best fit with. Thank you.
And Patty Haidu from the Liberal Party has a minute to respond.
I think that the role of a member of parliament is two things. One is to represent the constituents in Ottawa, but also to represent all of you in good decision-making. When you vote in an MP, how does that MP decide what is right for that community? And I think it's a blend of things. I think it's obviously doing consultations with the community in a very broad way, not phoning 9 people from the phone book. I think that it is actually bringing information to the riding about why good decisions need to be made and what the evidence says about the decision. And then I think it's about bringing all that information forward and making a decision in caucus and advocating for the position of the North in caucus. The Liberal Party also does not whip votes. So there is this misleading statement by our Member of Parliament, our former Member of Parliament, soon to be, that in fact all other parties have whipped votes. This is in fact incorrect, and I think it's an unfair and unjust statement.
Andrew Folds of the New Democrats.
Well, thank you very much for the question. I think I'd like to start off by saying, you know, my last 9 years in City Council, I think I've never been afraid to speak up. I've never been afraid to say what my constituents want. I've never been afraid to fight for what they believe in. And I think at the end of the day, that's what all of you want, is someone who will fight for the North in Ottawa. For far too long, we haven't had strong representation, and it's time for change. When you vote for someone, you're really voting for two things. You're voting for that person, and you're voting for their core values, their beliefs, their work ethic, their personality. But the second part is you need to have the confidence that you know what they're going to follow through on, and that's their policy. So in essence, you're voting for two things. You're voting for the core values of that person. I think I've demonstrated those core values in my performance in City Council, and you're voting for a policy. When you vote for me, you put your trust in me. That's a sacred trust, and I would never take it for granted. I would always vote with my heart and my mind, and I would never vote for anything that damages the constituency.
Thank you. Bruce Heyer, the Green Party, 1 minute.
Parties are not mentioned in the Canadian Constitution. From 1867 till 1970, all that was on the ballot was your name and your profession. In 1970, Pierre Trudeau amended the Elections Act and put party names on the ballot. In the fine print, it said you can't run for a party nationally unless the national leader signs your nomination papers. A few months later, he called his own backbenchers mere trained seals. Yes, most votes are whipped by the three main parties. Sorry about that, Patty. Actually, the Liberals do it less, somewhat less. The Harper guys are next, the Conservatives, and actually, since I left, virtually no votes have been free votes with the NDP, virtually none. They voted, Gloria Galloway of the Globe and Mail has documented this very well. So I joined the Green Party for many reasons. One is it's the only party that doesn't whip votes. I will always put constituents ahead of any party.
Okay, so here's where it might get tricky. We have 2 minutes of open debate. And Andrew, yes, you can start.
I guess what I want to start with is every political party, not every single vote is whipped. And I think everybody needs to understand that. But I think the core issue here is you need to know what you're voting for. You need to know what the values that you're voting for. You need to have trust in what you're voting for. If you don't know really what you're voting for, then you can't have any trust in the system. And that's where the platforms are front and center. You know what all of our platforms are. You need to know what you're voting for.
Okay,
And that is,
so now it is time to let somebody jump in there, Andrew. Thanks. Patty, go ahead.
So I'd like to take that on, actually, with you, Andrew. I mean, what are your core values? You certainly don't have a core commitment to any role that you've accepted in the recent past. The NDP policy has flip-flopped, clearly, depending on where in the country Thomas Mulcair is speaking. Just recently, we've heard him talk about childcare. His previous record on childcare as a Liberal MPP talked about how appalling it was to mandate childcare. So what is the value of your party? What are your core values? They're nowhere to be seen on your party website. In fact, when I chose the Liberal Party, I chose it specifically for the core values of the Liberal Party that include things like transparency and compassion and evidence-based policy decision-making. So I would challenge that statement, and
certainly
I would.
not minimum
Okay.
wage, certainly not childcare,
Did
certainly
Bruce
not
or
fairness
Richard,
for
did you want to
workers.
get your fair shot in? Bruce, go ahead.
Tonight's supposed to be a meeting primarily, I think, about business and Canada. I think it's really important to get on the record
That statement.
Support for the
No action. Once in a while, some vague commitments. Richard Harvey talks about the infrastructure spending in Nipigon. In fact, they're booming because of provincial dollars, twinning the highway, building the bridge, no federal support.
wrong, so you're kind of out of time. If you want to just wrap up quickly.
The clock is wrong.
It's supposed to be 1 minute. It was
So
set at 2 minutes.
$125 billion investment over 10 years, $10 billion investment per year for the first 2 years. I will fight to make sure we get our share.
Okay, and so we'll hopefully reset the clock to 1 minute now. And Andrew Folds, go ahead.
Well, thank you very much for the question. Clearly, Ring of Fire is really one of those items that sets Northern Ontario apart. The Ring of Fire is sort of a $50 to $120 billion opportunity. Not only is it an opportunity for Northwestern Ontario, but frankly, it's an opportunity for the entire nation. What is, in fact, very unfortunate is we have had no national leadership. And it is, in essence, we've seen investors walk away. And frankly, the provincial government made a bunch of announcements in the last provincial election, and they seem more interested in selling off hydro than actually getting something done with the Ring of Fire. Right now, we have the opportunity to create good-paying jobs for generations. We need to do so in full consultation with First Nations. We need to do so in full consultation with communities. And we need to make sure that those jobs stay in Northwestern Ontario. We need to make sure that the value-added jobs in Northwestern Ontario, we need to maximize the benefit in consultation with all of our partners to make sure that we do it right.
Thank you. Bruce Heyer.
I agree with everything that Andrew just said, and I'd like to add this. The reason that the Ring of Fire has not proceeded, the reason that the federal government has not jumped in is because we not only have failure of leadership in the federal government, but even more so, we have failure of leadership in the provincial government. I don't very often agree with Greg Rickford, but Greg Rickford accurately said that they should not commit their share of the funds and move ahead until there's a real plan on how the province decides to spend its $1 billion. We don't have a plan for infrastructure. We've done this wrongly for a long time. Also, going back 23 years, it was Bob Rae and the NDP who canceled the deal with Manitoba to bring inexpensive hydro to Northwestern Ontario. And as you know, the cost of hydroelectric power up here, while we pay for nuclear power and incompetence by Hydro One, it has been a real obstacle to us moving forward in a variety of ways.
Thank you. Richard.
$1 billion. Was it a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, just over $8 billion was transferred from the federal government to the province for infrastructure. In that, $1 billion was earmarked and was intended. It was everyone's understanding was going to be that $1 billion. It went elsewhere. Southern Ontario Transportation, I'm not sure exactly where it went. It disappeared. I was at the Rotary today. They asked me, how do you make sure then that it's going to happen, that it's going to be used for what you put in there for? There needs to be a plan in place. We have the same thing with federal transfers, with health care, We have the same thing in all different areas. We transfer the money. The province does what they want with it. The provincial Liberals decided that there were other priorities they had, and then they're asking for another billion. As Greg Rickford said, give us a plan before we come up with another $1 billion for you.
Okay, thank you. And now, 2 minutes of open debate, if somebody wants to. I'm going to let Patty start this time, Andrew. Go ahead, Patty.
Well, you know, interesting that Richard's talking about the plan. I mean, the plan the Conservatives have is to invest in ridings that they hold. That is the plan. If you have a Conservative MP, you get the money. And, you know, we haven't had a Conservative MP here for as long back as I can find. And so we have not seen our share of the pie. And that's unfair. That's unequitable. You know, again, Andrew Folds wants to talk about selling off hydro. I think he still thinks he's running for provincial government. But the tension that Ontario has faced is really about infrastructure. I mean, I'm not saying that it's a great idea to sell hydro, but here's what I know as running an organization. If you don't have enough revenue to meet your needs, you either get to increase your revenue or cut your expenses. And what you have to do to cut expenses, in my case and in the case of Ontario, is look for places to actually either sell things or stop programs.
Bruce,
and
do you wanna
Ontario's
get
made a
in
decision
at this point?
I'd
to
love to.
invest that money in infrastructure because of the federal deficit.
Let's talk about this myth about you have to be the party in power to get money into the riding. I'm sure you all remember when Ken Boshkoff, when he was a Conservative, said the airplanes will fly over unless you vote for him. My staff tell me that 5 out of the last 7 years, more federal money has come into Thunder Bay Superior North than came into any other Northern Ontario riding. If the Conservatives think they have a nice safe seat somewhere, they know that they don't have to invest money there. If they have a hard-working, hard-hitting, well-spoken, outspoken MP who stands up for the riding, the money does get here.
Okay, I'm going to have to get Richard to jump in
Folks,
and then Andrew.
The reality is that infrastructure spending is important. Yes, there has been a lot of infrastructure spending in our riding by the Conservative government. But let's not kid ourselves. Unprecedented amount. I actually have here, if people want to see it, that talks about the fact that if you look at from 1993 till 2005, what the Liberals put in compared to what's just come in, not even including the $53 billion invested in the Build Canada Fund, unprecedented, massive amounts of infrastructure spending. And that's because we recognize that it's being useful. At the same time, that has been done while eliminating the deficit and lowering taxes.
Okay, so we're running out of time, so I have to get Andrew in.
I'd like to start by saying I absolutely will not apologize for wanting to serve the public and doing so in any role. I want to be very clear about that I do not apologize to serve the public. But I want to be very clear that City Council, as a City Councillor, we're not allowed to run deficits. We have to spend within our means, which means we have to prioritize. And as a councillor, I realize the investment in infrastructure is profound, because when you do that, you give the private sector confidence. When you give the private sector confidence, they invest. And so instead of, you know, maxing out credit cards and taking out massive deficits, we are reprioritizing and making sure that the right investments go into the right priorities to make sure they benefit Northwestern Ontario.
Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the third question, which is going to Andrew. What measures would your party adopt to encourage businesses, especially small companies, to invest in new technologies?
Well, thank you very much. I'd like to make three quick points. One, I was just in Marathon and talking to small business owners there, and it really resonated with me, their plight in terms of how difficult making ends meet was. And so, in essence, what we need to do is we need to make sure that those small businesses have the infrastructure they need. We will invest 1 extra cent of the gas tax into municipalities so they can have a robust infrastructure. We also recognize that small businesses, it's very risky. And people take on a lot of personal risk, and they make a lot of personal investment. We want to make it a little easier for them. We want to reduce their taxes from 11 to 9. But the thing that is actually the most exciting is we want to encourage small and medium-sized business in innovation and research and development. So we want to provide incentives so that they can reinvest in their businesses to make them more profitable and more sustainable.
Thank you. Bruce, same question, 1 minute.
The Green Party of Canada, by the way, please go to Vision Green, Google Vision Green, the policy statement, or Green Party platform and budget. We would roll out we have written a National Sustainable Jobs Plan. We would make critical investments in trades, apprenticeships, and education to make sure that our Canadians are ready to work. We also would dedicate 1%, or rather 1% of the 5% GST to infrastructure. We would expand the home renovation program. You remember eco-energy, we would return it and even expand it to create lots of jobs, unleash an army of carpenters and electricians across Canada. We would reduce small business taxes immediately to 9% and more later. And to be honest, we would increase the taxes on large businesses, which are currently 1/2 the US rate.
Thank you. Richard.
Small business is the backbone of the Canadian economy, and I think we all recognize this, and it's absolutely important to have successful small businesses. We've made that commitment. I just know from being mayor of a community, and we're running $20 million budget there. We're looking at it, but one of the things we recognize by lowering taxes, allowing more money to be in the pockets of the business people, getting the commercial taxes down, people invest. Businesses move on. We'll be lowering the taxes. The other thing that's very interesting is not just what we're going to do, because we're looking at over the next 4 years reducing the payroll deductions. So we're looking at a 20% reduction. Looking at the other parties, and this is not what I'm saying, this is the Independent Federation of Canadian Businesses, they have pegged the cost of the Liberals' plan. For the average Canadian worker, it's going to cost $1,000 a year more that they will have taken off their paycheck. And the employer, the boss, another $1,000 bucks. NDP, $1,500 and $1,500 that will be coming off. That's not for me.
Thank you. And Patty.
Well, we'll get into the debate later because those numbers just seem to be pulled out of thin air. But I mean, we have a very similar plan. We want to keep the committed small business tax rate reduction to 9%. We want to invest $500 million in the federal provincial labor market agreements that will help small and medium-sized business owners have access to a well-trained labor force. We definitely want to invest in jobs and skill training, make sure that we actually expand training programs, and make sure that we actually include Aboriginal communities in that expansion. These kinds of things will help small and medium business grow. We have two parts of the problem. Part of the problem is the cost of small business, but part of also the problem is actually acquiring appropriate labor. And I can tell you as an employer, that's a challenge. It is difficult to find well-trained people who have had access to education and access to supports to enter the workforce. So these are the commitments that will actually be a robust plan that will take into consideration all elements of the struggles that small and medium-sized businesses are facing.
Thank you. Okay, so let Bruce kick off this round.
Very large business a priority. He slashed the tax rate to half that of the U.S. with no strings attached, no job creation, no investment. It's moving into offshore tax-free accounts in Panama and the Bermudas. It's not the way to go. Did you know the IMF, not a left-wing organization, has tabulated the indirect and direct subsidies to the oil companies at $34 billion a year.
So we're running behind schedule, so we'll have to keep it going tight. Andrew, sorry.
There's two quick points that I want to make in terms of supporting small business as well. In our party's platform, we want to support universities and colleges in terms of research and development and the commercialization of products. And I'm very hopeful and optimistic that the spin-offs of that will affect local business. But the other thing I think we're missing here is we have a Canadian content piece in Ontario. I wish it was higher, but it's made sure that Bombardier is very sustainable for the next number of years. The spin-offs for small business, because of that investment in public transit, it is huge. We've got 1,000 jobs at Bombardier, and the spin-offs for all the smaller companies is huge.
So Patty.
Well, I'm really glad that Andrew brought up Bombardier because their corporate tax hike will actually effectively end big business in Northern Ontario, and that's a huge risk. Talk to anybody along the region, talk to anybody in some of the smaller communities, and oftentimes they're a one-industry town. And when you raise corporate taxes in small towns like this, what you do is actually shut down those businesses and they take their business elsewhere. It's an unfortunate fact, but it happens all the time. We can't afford that in the north, and it's a huge flaw of the NDP plan.
So I know
Richard.
that Some of the people in this room were actually last Thursday at the workshop that was put on looking at some of the issues with the small businesses. The Canadian Federation of Independent Businesses. I'm just going by what they say. They went through all of their different factors, and on every single one, they said the Conservative Party of Canada is the party of small business. That's from them, not me.
Okay, thank you. So the next question is directed to Bruce. For the 2-minute debate portion, just as a rule of thumb, trying to give everybody about 30 seconds. So. Okay, employment insurance is supposed to be an insurance program to support workers when they lose their job. Of course, it's paid for by workers and employers. The government, however, has traditionally collected more than it needs to fund the program, which makes it a tax, not an insurance premium. Successive governments have committed to reforming the system, but nobody has actually ever come through with that. So will your party commit to reforming the EI system to make it work the way it is supposed to, as an insurance program funded on a revenue-neutral basis that will lower premiums for both workers and employers?
Both the Liberals and the Conservatives have made the EI premiums into a tax. A strong statement, but Paul Martin and the Liberal government basically stole $56 billion from the Workers' Insurance Fund and used it to balance the budget and look like heroes. Big problem. It went to the Supreme Court. The Supreme Court said it was illegal. In a bizarre finding, they said it was illegal, but the government didn't have to pay it back to the EI fund. If there ever was a job-killing tax, it is the EI premiums that are way above what's being paid out. I and my staff have to deal weekly, monthly, annually, struggling to get people their benefits that they have trouble getting because this present government has quite clearly ordered their people in the field to, whenever possible, not pay out the benefits that they need, they deserve, and they've paid for.
Thank you. Richard.
That's why, recognizing that, I thought it was 30 million, but Bruce, if it's as you say, I thought it was 30 million that the Liberals used in their slush fund. But whatever it was, that's not right. That's not the way it should be. We should not, especially on the backs of small business people, and you and I, be funding personal slush funds. And that's why we're starting immediately, was beginning to roll back on those payroll deductions, because it is supposed to be revenue neutral. That's where we're moving on it. And we're going to keep on going that direction. So I guess, are we willing to look at, your question was, are we willing to look at reforming it or working on it? We're already doing that. We recognize that that has to take place. But let's make no bones. Well, we're looking at reducing the deductions that will come off of your paycheck and will come out of the employer's pocket, the business's pocket. The NDP and the Liberals are looking at payroll tax hikes. That's an issue.
Okay, thank you. Patty.
I really love how the Conservative Party just makes up whatever they want. I mean, they wave little fact sheets around and they make it up. In fact, our plan is to reduce EI premiums from $263 to $231 and follow through on the reduction of small business tax rate, which I've talked about. We also want to lower the waiting time for people to actually access EI, so end the higher 910-hour eligibility penalty, which the Conservatives placed. We'll also repeal the 2012 Harper changes to employment insurance. And we'll work with the provinces and territories to assess how successful the EI system is really in terms of delivering its core mandate to provide income security to workers in a changing labor market. Really, I think we can all call on the ghost of whatever prime minister that we want. What I really am interested in is looking forward. We can look forward now, or we can rehash the history of the last 20 years. My interest is in actually making good policy that's going to take us forward, and I think we have the best platform to do that.
Thank you. Andrew.
Well, the best predictor of the future is actually the past. And, Mr. Heyer was quite right. I mean, the Liberal Party of Canada stole our money, stole $56 billion of our money, what small businesses paid and what employees paid to balance their budget. Not only did they take that money, they made it more difficult for people to make claims for their benefits. So not only did they take the money away, there were fewer and fewer people eligible, which drove people to the fringes, which drove people to poverty. So when there are these claims about, looking forward, Well, we've got a lot of people that are fighting on the fringes, fighting against poverty. We're committed to freezing EI premiums for the next 4 years. We certainly want to decrease the wait times because it's the right thing to do. We know that an efficient EI system gets people back to work quickly and
will cost. I have a choice, and we have a choice. Do we trust the independent businesses, the small businesses, and the people that are actually looking at what it's really going to mean to them?
We'll have
or
to
do
let
we-
somebody else jump in.
Or do we listen to the other parties?
Bruce?
We have two parties of big business in this country. We have one party of no business in this country. And perspective on many issues, social programs and others. I would never in a million years want to see them actually run Canada, and I don't think you do either.
Andrew, you probably want to get in?
Well, I'm a proud New Democrat, and I make no apologies for that. I think the EI program is one of those programs that is sort of one of those social foundations of our country. We are a compassionate people. We are an empathetic people. We know that sometimes some people have hard luck. And I think it is truly Canadian when we help each other out. I don't think it's particularly helpful when we take money away, make it more
And
difficult to
just
make
to-
claim benefits, and drive people towards the fringes.
Okay, so Patty, you want to get in, I'm sure.
So here we have the mythology of hard luck coming up from the NDP. It's not luck, okay? It's infrastructure, it's housing, it's investments in communities that make better opportunities for family. It's not luck. And, you know, I'm so tired of hearing the NDP claim the social justice mantle. In fact, when you're running an austerity budget and you're backloading your promises for 20 years and upwards, you're running a dishonest campaign. And that's what you're hearing from the NDP, this mantle of social justice wrapping themselves in the flag of the poor. Well, I'll tell you, I work with the poor, and it's never luck. It's always the social determinants of health, which include housing and education.
Okay, thank you. So, next question. Back to Richard. Our chamber members are huge fans of balanced budgets, but also see the need for big investment in infrastructure, skills, and competitive tax regimes. How do you prioritize tax versus spending? And how important is a balanced budget to your party?
Absolutely balanced budget. We've made that commitment. Now is the time to move forward with balanced budgets, but also with lower taxes. Those two can go together very well. When we stimulate the economy, when you get small businesses, give them the opportunity to be successful. When we're doing that, guess what? Money comes in. The surplus we have this year in Canada that we've now seen, that's not because we cut programs. That's not because of any of that. It's because more money came in because we see economic growth taking place. And so I do not accept the premise that you can actually, that you have to separate the two between keeping your taxes down and having infrastructure spending. We've had, as I said, the facts are facts. Unprecedented infrastructure spending while lowering taxes. It can be done.
Okay, thank you. Patty, same question.
Well, the federal government surplus has been built on the backs of the veterans, the Indigenous people, the unhoused, the hungry, the students. So let's not talk about a surplus here. That's a shell game. Really, what I'm talking about right now, the Liberal Party is talking about right now, is a historic investment in infrastructure. We have an infrastructure deficit. In Thunder Bay alone, we have 900 unhoused people. If we spend money right now, we will cut our social costs, we will boost our economy through providing stable and skilled employment, and we will also stimulate all of those small and medium-sized businesses. Where do you think their customers come from? They come from employed people. They come from people that are thriving in their various careers. So in fact, what we need right now is we need an investment in infrastructure. We are proposing running a small deficit, no different than investing in something like your mortgage or your education. I have run a deficit for years to educate myself and to educate my children. It's a planned deficit to improve our earning potential, and that's what this is.
Thank you. Andrew.
Well, thank you very much for the question. And I think what we need to focus in on is what we're spending the money on. My party is committed to a balanced budget, and I take some exception to the comments made that it's an austerity budget. We are investing in childcare. We're investing in pharmacare. We're investing in infrastructure. We're making those critical infrastructure investments that make differences in people's lives. One of the issues that I'm hearing over and over again is people are struggling with their day-to-day lives. And so a government needs to make priorities within their fiscal responsibility to make the investments that improve people's lives. We have a concrete plan. Deficits themselves. We're not talking like that. We've got a clear, concrete plan that will make a difference in people's lives, everyday lives.
Okay, thank you. Bruce?
I agree with Patty in that all of us do wise debt when we buy a house, when we invest in certain things. It's our annual operating expenses that do need to be balanced. To reiterate, Kevin Page said that we had the best budget. It's a balanced budget, and he even believed it. And he really, he gave it a big endorsement. Where would we spend the operating funds that we are going to spend? A plus and minus. We're going to reduce over 5 years the debt to GDP ratio from 31% currently to 26% in 5 years. We're going to do away with tax loopholes now that are costing us $3 billion to the very richest 1% of our society. We are going to increase the large corporate tax rate to where it was in 2009. That's not too wild, to 19%. We will spend on infrastructure $6.4 billion. The list goes on, including retraining forestry workers for $1/10 billion a year, and we'll reduce tuition to students. And once again, go to the website and look at these things. They've been published for weeks, for months.
Okay, thank you. So 2 minutes of debate now. And Patty's going to jump in first.
All right, well, the NDP concrete plan has been based on faulty numbers. They projected double the economic growth projection that based on the conservative numbers. They're projecting an extra $10 a barrel of oil. So all of the extra money that they think they have, including Thomas Mulcair's glee at the supposed surplus, has gone into their balanced budget. So in fact, their numbers are flawed. And as my colleague has pointed out, economists have pointed out that their plan is as wholly as Swiss cheese. It's
Okay, so
poorly
we're gonna have
costed,
to
it's
move
poorly
on.
planned.
Bruce next.
Just one, I agree with what Patty just said, except Mr. Mulcair is basing his predictions on $67 a barrel oil, where many economists now believe that it's more likely to go to $20 a barrel oil. So wildly optimistic predictions by the NDP. I'm really concerned that about whether it's poor design or active deception, Mr. Mulcair is just wrong on this.
Andrew, I'm sure you want to get in.
I'm sure I do. Well, I mean, I've just read a number of editorials in a number of major newspapers that suggest that the NDP plan is prudent, and you know, if you take a look at the history of provincial governments in this country, we have the best history of running balanced budgets, and so our history speaks for itself. Our performance speaks for itself, and you just need to look at the evidence. I again will speak to the values of our platform. Pharmacare. I'll speak to the values of childcare.
And we're also running out of time on this, so Richard,
I'm
finish off.
confused. A couple of things here. One is the comments about Kevin Page, because I listened to the news this morning. Sorry, that's not what was on the news this morning. Another thing that I want to look at is that, yes, there are times for running small deficits, possibly. The reality is, though, is that if you are going to be running a deficit, as was stated, you have to have a plan to get out. The balanced budget law in Canada states that that's exactly what you have to do. You have to have a plan to get out. Justin Trudeau said if he's elected, he will scrap the balanced budget law. In other words, he doesn't plan on ever getting out of deficit.
So we're going to have squeeze in one final question directed to Patty to start. Retirement savings are a significant concern for employers and employees alike. Employers are worried about the extra payroll costs of mandated programs such as the Ontario Retirement Pension Plan or an expanded Canada Pension Plan. So what is your party's plan to address concerns around retirement savings?
Well, we at the Liberal Party do believe that we can make the Canada Pension Plan more generous at a lower cost, and we can make it easier to save for retirement. We're going to take a direct action and work with the provinces and territories to provide Canadians with a more secure retirement. We'll restore the eligibility age from 67 back to 65, and I can say from low-income seniors. We'll immediately increase the guarantee, and in fact, we'll sit down with the provinces. We don't believe in unilateral decision-making at the federal level. We believe in collaborative decision-making with provinces, and that's a big difference.
Thank you. Andrew.
Well, thank you very much for the question. Certainly, from my perspective, as I knock on doors and meet people over the last few months, the issues around seniors are significant, and certainly one of the things that I'm hearing is a lot of fear out there. Seniors are living in fear of what's coming next, and it's largely around their own income and how insecure it may be or how little it is. And so the NDP and I believe that we should be increasing CPP and improving the quality of life of our seniors. But that's only one piece of the puzzle. The NDP also believes we should be reducing the eligibility age from 67 to 65. We also think that we should keep income splitting for seniors. Those things will make a difference in the pocketbooks for seniors. But there are other things that can also improve the lives of your pharmacare program last week. And this will make a difference in seniors. 1 in 10 people don't fulfill their prescriptions because they can't afford it. Our plan will lift 200,000 seniors out of poverty. I'm very proud of our plan.
Thank you. Bruce.
I'd like to answer a broader question, and that is, how do we implement a national senior strategy and make sure that all seniors have the safety and security that they deserve and need and have worked for their whole lives? So we do many of the same things. We would keep income splitting for pensioners, for sure. We would also double the CPP benefits because it only costs 1% per year to administer CPP, unlike many private plans where all the benefits are eaten up by high percentage rates. But in addition, we will have a guaranteed livable income. And another way to put money in people's pockets are carbon fee and dividend. No time to explain it tonight, but please Google carbon fee and dividend. We would also do pharmacare, and a really big one is predictable home care support to help keep seniors in their homes. It'll save money to society, and it will allow those people to maintain their quality of life longer.
Thank you. Richard.
We've certainly recognized the concerns that are out there. My parents are 80 years old, just over 80. They're living in their home. Things such as the pension splitting is the reason they can stay in the home. Making sure that we get more money into the pockets of seniors is absolutely important. And with that in mind, we've expanded additional funding because we've also recognized that pension splitting is great, but there's also seniors who are single. There's seniors who are widowed, and we want to make sure that they're getting more money. We've expanded services for seniors. Those are the things that I think are absolutely important because seniors built this country for us, and we need to move on. We need to give them that support. We need to be there for them. And part of the way of doing that is making sure the tax-free savings accounts, so many seniors have told me about how blessed they are to have those tax-free savings accounts, how much assistance they've been to them, and providing additional funding.
Okay, thank you. All right, one final 2-minute open round, and then we'll go to the closing statements. And somebody's going to stick up their hand? Patty's going to go. All right.
I'd like to also clarify that the Liberal Party, despite the fear-mongering that we've heard from the Conservatives and the realistically, making, in the best, doesn't have any money left over to put in any savings account, never mind a TFSA. So you're definitely not talking to the seniors I'm talking to.
All different levels appreciate the tax-free savings account. I appreciate the opportunity, whether it's a small amount you can put in a large amount. People are appreciating that. And we need to keep on moving ahead with that. But also, even more importantly, we brought in the income splitting. I'm so thrilled to hear now that the Liberals and the NDP are going to support it when they didn't initially. So this is a wonderful thing to hear. We also are bringing in, as I said, additional support and help for the widows, because we heard that message when we brought in the income splitting. People
Andrew,
say, great,
did you want to get
we
in
need
at some
more.
point on that?
I would like to actually take a little bit of a different tack. Your question was about retirement security, and one group that we haven't talked about in terms of retirement security is our veterans. We've asked our veterans to do enormous things and see and participate in very difficult tasks, and it's shameful the kinds of cuts that we've made to our veterans in terms
We've
of benefits.
actually-
And you know, there are issues with mental health. There are certainly issues with the support center here being closed. And I mean, we have to give them the support that they need, that they deserve, because
I'm gonna
they've
have to
done
get
heavy
Bruce to
lifting
jump
for
in
all of
now
us.
to
So we
close
cannot
off.
forget about them.
Bruce?
I'll save you some time, Chisholm. I don't want to add anything right now.
Okay. All right. Well, great. Thank you, Bruce, because that actually, for the first time, got us in at 2 minutes. So we'll do the closing statements, a minute each, in the reverse order of how we started. So we'll start with Bruce and move towards me. Bruce, go ahead.
You have 4 parties to choose from in this election. The Conservatives haven't won in this riding since 1931. That's 84 years ago, so you don't have to worry about vote splitting. Richard Harvey is one of the bravest people in Thunder Bay to run for the Conservatives here. It is going to be either a Liberal or an NDP minority government. That's what it's going to be. It's very clear. And so how do you go about deciding who to hire or perhaps rehire, in my case? I'd like you to think about which of the people standing up before you you'd like representing you. Someone who will represent your interests and put your interests ahead of any party, someone who's been a strong voice and will continue to be, who will best represent your interests in that minority government, who's capable of
Thank you. Andrew.
Thank you very much. First, may I just thank the Chamber for hosting tonight's event. I want to thank all the candidates for being up here, and I want to most importantly thank all of you. I mean, standing room only is quite something. So, as I've said, I have 9 years' experience on City Council, and I've learned a great deal, primarily from listening to my constituents. I want to deliver for them and for the future of my and all of our families in Thunder Bay and Superior North. Thunder Bay Superior North, I believe, is on the cusp of greatness, economically, environmentally, and socially. But it requires national leadership and someone who can deliver. The choice is clear, and people want change. Tonight, I'm asking for your trust. I ask for your vote. A vote for Andrew Folds, for Tom Mulcair, and the NDP to build the kind of Canada we can all believe in.
Thank you. Patty.
Thank you for attending tonight and for being such a responsive audience. It's a pleasure. It's clear that Canadians have become tired of a Conservative government filled with deception and shell games and empty promises. And the NDP is following the Conservative model of deception. Their flawed costing shows that Thomas Mulcair has already broken major promises, delayed help for the working-class Canadians, and embraced Harper's cuts. Economist Jack Mintz notes that Mulcair's job-killing corporate tax hike will lead to a loss of nearly 150,000 Canadian jobs immediately, and many will be in our region. In this election, Canadians have a clear choice between the Liberal Party's plan for smart investments that will create jobs and growth, or the cuts promised by Mulcair and Harper that will slow down our economy even more. I look forward to working hard with you on the challenges and opportunities that we see here in Thunder Bay Superior North. On October 19th, help me become the voice that we need in Ottawa to get real action in our region. Thank you.
Thank you. Richard.
The best person to spend your money is you. I firmly believe that. My friends here, they're making a lot of promises, and we always are hearing that. The Conservatives have eliminated the deficit. The Liberals want to create more debt for our children and grandchildren. The Conservatives have lowered taxes for families and businesses. The NDP will raise taxes to pay for their reckless promises. As I said, the best person to spend your money is you. Country.
Includes the Thunder Bay participating in the process.
heart rate. Task trainers that really don't give that real life effect. We would have to be really saying, okay, so now your patient would be doing this, or now your patient would be responding this way. And with Simon, we're able to really give that real life training within the safe learning environment where they can make the mistakes and really learn and see what happens when you react inappropriately and appropriately. We just want to thank the donors for allowing us to purchase him and for allowing us to really bring simulation more to the forefront here at Thunder Bay Regional. And we're just scratching the surface, and we really hope to continue with increasing this and make this even more successful. Cry, sweat, spit. He has audible heart sounds, lung sounds, bowel sounds. You can feel his pulses in all of his extremities. He responds to medications appropriately. So for instance, if I were to give him something that would increase his heart rate, he will actually have that increased heart rate on the monitor. He's used on Wi-Fi, so you can control him this way. He will respond through the mannequin himself. So if I wanted to make him cough, for instance, I could show you how to do that. Well, Simon allows us to really get into the nitty-gritty of what real patient care looks like. And if we didn't have someone as high fidelity or as high skill as Simon, we'd really be practicing on mannequins and task trainers that really don't give that real life effect. We would have to be really saying, okay, so now your patient would be doing this, or now your patient would be responding this way. And with Simon, we're able to really give that real life training within the safe learning environment where they can make the mistakes and really learn and see what happens when you react inappropriately and appropriately. We just want to thank the donors for allowing us to purchase him and for allowing us to really bring simulation more to the forefront here at Thunder Bay Regional. And we're just scratching the surface, and we really hope to continue with increasing our simulation space and our tools so that we can just really enhance this and make this even more successful.
Point-of-care ultrasound is becoming about as much useful as the stethoscope of the physician in the future. This is a portable ultrasound machine. It's the latest generation portable ultrasound. We are using it for point-of-care ultrasound diagnostic and for procedures. If someone arriving in shock, we can assess much better, identify and narrow down the diagnostic of what's causing that shock by assessing the volume status of the patient. We can see, is it distributive, is it hemorrhagic, is it in the context of septic? We can take a look at the heart, see if the heart is pumping well or not. Someone arriving short of breath, it helps me, I can do a lung scan and see if there's a pneumothorax, hemothorax, if there's an increased density, is it CHF, is there pneumonia with an ultrasound, which helps me see it much faster. So I'm literally walking around that department with very focal indication, looking almost every second patient using the ultrasound on. So we use it for a tremendous amount of application. And what's nice about this one is it's got such a high resolution of image. It's like going from a black and white TV to a HD TV and seeing every little details. It's fantastic.
Is this on yet? Okay, good. All right, so we'll want to get down to this as quickly as possible. Give a couple of seconds while people get their seats. Just remind everybody that each candidate will get a chance to answer every question. They'll get 1 minute for their response. We'll have 2 minutes of open debate, open-ish debate, and then 1 minute closing statements at the end. So, guess some people are moving on. Okay, so I'll just introduce our candidates. We have Christy Radbourne from the Green Party at my immediate right. We have John Rafferty from the New Democratic Party next to her. Don Rusnak for the Liberal Party. And at my far right, Mo Kamuzi for the Conservative Party. So we randomly drew the order for questions, and we'll start with Christy Radbourne of the Green Party. What will you do to encourage more employers to allow I'm sorry. I totally my apologies. We have opening statements, 1 minute each. I was just in a hurry to get going. Sorry. So, Christy, your opening statement. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm Christy Radbourne. I've been an educator for 15 years in this community. I've run 2 small businesses. I've spent 10 years as a federal law enforcement officer in the United States, and I've been a social justice and ecological activist in this community since I arrived. Canada's natural resources, productive economy, and resourceful people should make us one of the wealthiest countries in this world. However, the Harper Conservatives have skewed and weakened the economy, failed communities by slashing funding and subsidizing multinational corporations, compromised our position as global leaders, and utterly failed to act in the face of climate change. Green's platform moves Canada forward. Our economic plan invests in people, strong communities, sustainable resource development, and closing the $350 billion infrastructure gap. By repairing relations globally, supporting and protecting small businesses, addressing climate change, and restoring faith in our government, we will build a Canada that works together.
Thank you, Christy. John, your opening statement.
Bonjour, Abenogiak, John Rafferty, non-Vijnakas. Bonjour, hello everyone. I'm glad that everyone's here today. This is an interesting format, and I do hope we don't have the same questions as we had earlier. I've represented Thunder Bay Rainy River now for 7 years, and there are 2 parts to this job. One is the part that you do with your constituency and the constituency work you do, and the other is the work that you do in Ottawa. And I just want to give a shout out immediately to my staff, who have done a wonderful job for these past 7 years, and I couldn't have done it without them. We sort out a lot of problems for a lot of people. In Ottawa, I'm very proud of the work I've done, particularly with my work with veterans and Veterans Affairs. I'm very proud of our platform with retirement security for seniors, as I'm the architect of that, and how we move forward to ensure that we don't have any seniors in poverty. I like the plan. I hope I get a chance to talk about it tonight.
Okay, thank you. Don.
Thank you for being here.
I'm going to thank everyone for being here, and I want to assure you that a small business person myself, I understand how hard it is to start from scratch and struggle to make your own business grow. You know the pressures, you and I know the pressures we all face in building our small businesses, and oftentimes government is more a hindrance than a help. But I want to take a step back and look at the big picture. The region is huge. I can attest to that by our 4 days in the west of the riding. Because of our unique region, the governments need to adapt to better serve businesses and businesses of our region. They need to help businesses when the business cycle and commodity markets hit their low points, and need to have programs and services tailored for our unique region. We're in a low point now, and have been for some time. That is why the $125 billion Liberal plan to stimulate the economy over the next decade is one you should be choosing when you choose your next member of parliament. The infrastructure investments won't only provide an employment boost, but also a boost.
So you're wrapping up, right?
Yes. And provide the building blocks that we need for the upswing in the market.
Okay, thank you. Mo.
Good evening, and thank you for coming. My name is Mo Kamuzi. I'm your Conservative candidate for Thunder Bay Rainy River, and I am a small business person as well. The Conservative government has a proven record. It has economic strength during turbulent times and balanced leadership with our Prime Minister. He's helped Canadians prosper with lower taxes for our families, seniors, and small businesses. this government's record and hard work to ensure job creation in spite of these tough economic times. We, as business people, understand the value of hard work and what lower taxes means to all of us. It is for these reasons that we need to continue with the proven leadership of Stephen Harper to ensure our economic prosperity, safety, and future opportunities for our children.
And you're wrapping up as well?
Thank you once again for inviting us. And I'm Mo Kamuzi, your Conservative candidate. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll start the questions, and I'll revisit my premature first question. And we'll start with Christy on my immediate right. What will you do to encourage more employers to allow apprentices to complete their certifications?
Thank you for the question. The Greens have a plan a Job Corps plan that will invest in 160,000 jobs for young people. And those jobs are aimed at creating skilled labor jobs for people to build in infrastructure in our communities. We have an infrastructure gap of $353 billion right now, and we need to respond to that gap. And the way the Greens have to do that is to take their money, invest it in those skilled labor jobs. Those skilled labor jobs will give kids the chance to pick up those skills, work for their communities, and close that infrastructure gap as well.
Thank you. John.
Well, I think everybody in this room is ready for a change of government, except, I suppose, Conservative supporters in this room right now. But everybody else is, and there's a reason why. And the reason is that this government has not been interested in talking with the provinces. If you want apprenticeship programs to work, you have to be on the same at the same table with the provinces. The provinces are an integral part of this. The college system is an integral part of this. You know, I was chatting to a fellow the other day at the door, and he said, why do I have to go all the way to Toronto to complete, and all the expensive course that entails, to complete the next 4 months, in this case, of his apprenticeship program? And he shouldn't have to. But if the federal government and the provincial government are not at the same table talking about apprenticeships, you're never going to move ahead. You're never going to have that opportunity. And so if you build the Ring of Fire, if you work to stop the decline of forestry, if you make sure that FedNor works for everybody in Northern Ontario and you don't return over $1 billion, and pardon me?
You're out of time.
All right.
So Don.
Well, I'm going to agree with John here, and the one thing we do need is change. John's been here for 8 years, and we have problems here in Thunder Bay Rainy River. The Liberal Party has announced a program for apprenticeship and skills training, $750 million. We need to invest not only in infrastructure, but we need to invest in the people that are doing the work. If we don't invest in the people that are doing the work, then ultimately we have other people coming in and doing that work. I have friends that are in the trades, and I probably should have went into the trades first because they made a lot more money than me off the start. But it's a core a piece of the Liberal plan that we invest in training, apprenticeship training, giving more money to youth to learn the trades and get skilled jobs that we need here in the region.
Thank you. Mo?
Thank you. Our government has invested in the McIntyre Centre, which invested in skills and training. That skills and training will be there for our future generation, and the Ring of Fire, which is an important project that we have to continue. They understand the importance of keeping small business tax lower. They understand that employers have to hire people. By increasing taxes and stifling jobs, it's not helping our economy. So, keeping in mind that this economy needs to move forward, we're in neutral. There's money out there for this community to have, and it will take a proper representative to get that money and drive this community of ours out of neutral and forward. Moving forward, our government has continued to invest in our education for our children. They understand
And that's your
That is our
time as well.
future.
Okay, we're not, so we're going to go to the 2 minutes of open debate, and Christy, you put up your hand first, so you can kick it off.
So the Greens are also committed to holding the small business tax so that small businesses have the opportunity to reinvest in their businesses. As well, we will be creating a Canadian infrastructure bank to provide robust and innovative financing to companies who want to utilize green technology. Additionally, our National Community Environment Service Corps will commit $1 billion a year to training students and also helping them with abolish their student debt.
Okay, thanks. John, you look like you want to get in.
I wonder if anybody in this room has tried to find a drywaller to do some work around their house. It's almost impossible. And nobody wants to see the drywall job that I do on my own wall. So, it's not just a question of all the manufacturing jobs that have been lost. It's not just a question of saying sort of glibly and widely that, we have to do something to have opportunities for kids to get into apprenticeships. You have to find out where those niches are. You have to find out in Northern Ontario what is needed and what will be needed as projects move forward. And again, I'll
Just want to give the other two a chance to jump in, Mo or Dawn?
Sure.
Mo, go ahead, and then
Sure,
Dawn.
absolutely. We know in this community that the Ring of Fire has been a large topic. It's a big concern. Having adequately skilled and trained employees moving forward for that project is paramount. Education and training has been at the top of the Conservative Party's initiatives. Also keeping small business tax low, not penalizing us moving forward. So in order to move this community forward, we need to keep our business tax low and invest in our children.
Okay, thanks. Dawn, do you want to jump in?
Well, the Conservative Party has been here for 10 years, and they haven't done anything for Thunder Bay in terms of skilled trades training. We have a problem with skilled training, or skilled trades training, and I'll agree with John. I was trying to find a Tyler in Thunder Bay, and everyone knows how hard that is. We need to invest in our youth, and we need to be educating our youth from an early age that becoming a lawyer or going to university isn't the only path. If you're interested in something else, that you should grab it and go with it. We have to stop focusing on certain areas of education, and we need to educate for our needs and what the people want. And that's about education.
Okay.
That's what the Liberal plan is.
Thank you. All right, so the next round, we'll start with John Rafferty. Dependable transportation infrastructure is vital in order for companies to get their products and people where they are needed, both in and out of Canada. Ontario currently has an infrastructure gap of approximately $60 billion, but our province receives far less than its per capita share of federal infrastructure funds. Will your party commit to giving Ontario its fair share of infrastructure funding?
Well, the first part of that is to increase the amount from the gas tax that all the provinces and territories receive. And that is because you can't tell the provinces. Someone said in the earlier debate that when you transfer money from the federal government to the provinces, you can't tell them how to do it. There are no strings attached, and that's true. But you can provide more infrastructure money for that to happen. A good example is the Ring of Fire, where the Liberal government in Ontario has promised $1 billion. Now, if Tom Mulcair and the NDP form the next government, there will be that other additional $1 billion put in there. And quite frankly, I'd like to see the Premier's face when she actually has to pony up that $1 billion that she has no intention of ever doing. And so, again, you have to work with partnerships. You have to work with the province. You have to sit down at the table. You have to make sure that you move ahead. $60 billion is a lot of money, and I don't know if that figure is accurate. I suspect it is. It may even be a little short. And so there is a place at the table for the federal government to work with the provinces to make sure everybody in Northern Ontario benefits.
Okay, thank you. Dawn.
I've looked at the NDP plan, if you want to call it that. Perhaps Mr. Rafferty is talking about the $3 billion pot that is under the heading Help Where Canadians Need It Most. I don't know where the NDP is getting this money and balancing the budget. It's a false plan. The Liberals have a real plan for investment in infrastructure and moving this economy forward. But it's not only spending money. It's about investing in the people and doing the work with the people on the ground. We all know, being from this region, we have a huge Aboriginal population. I'm an Aboriginal person myself, and I've worked in the far north, and I've worked in a lot of the communities in the Treaty 3 area. And they want to be a part of this mineral boom that we can achieve. Unfortunately, the party to my right, the Conservative Party, hasn't been up to the challenge, and Mr. Rafferty hasn't been either, and he's been the MP representative here for the last 8 years.
Thank you. Mo.
The only infrastructure money this community has seen has been from the federal government. The cyclotron, the Highway 1117 twinning just recently, Health Sciences Research Institute, and there's many more. Our government is committed to this community, and it is because of the Conservative Party's input with Minister Greg Rickford that we have not been left behind. I agree. Our representative, our NDP candidate sitting on my left, has not done anything. Ask yourselves the question. Higher taxes is recipe for disaster. Low tax plan, investing in our infrastructure, staying the course, helping small businesses and families build economies, not hurt them.
Thank you. Christy.
So we have a few things. I'd like to take a piece off of Mo there and just say that right now we are sitting on a $680 billion surplus in our corporate tax for our large corporations. And that $680 billion is not being reinvested in our communities. In fact, since the Liberals and the Conservatives cut the corporate tax rate down to 15%, we have seen investment in manufacturing and investment in equipment decrease to less than 5% over those years. So we in the Green Party really believe that infrastructure is the way to go. We are going to commit $6.4 billion a year, and that's 1 point of GST to municipalities. Increase the gas tax as well. We believe we need to balance that federal revenues that they receive right now. Municipalities are receiving 8% of the revenues compared to 42% that the province is receiving and 50% that the federal government's keeping. That money needs to be balanced out. Municipalities cannot respond and businesses cannot respond and be profitable in their communities if their infrastructure is crumbling around them.
Okay, thank you. So with 2 minutes, John has indicated he'd like to kick it off, so go ahead.
Well, 50 years ago, the federal government paid for half of all the infrastructure in all the provinces and the territories in Canada. Now it's about 13%, and it's in fact a little bit lower than that, depending on what region of the country you're looking at. The federal government just simply hasn't been doing its fair share. And Mr. Rusnak was wondering about a balanced budget for Tom Mulcair. Well, we're the party. Justin Trudeau's not interested in doing this. Is making corporations pay their fair share. I don't see that there's any problem with that. It's $680 billion, as Christy said, in dead money. I think that was the term that the late Jim Flaherty used to describe the trickle-down theory that Mr. Harper still believes in. It hasn't trickled down. It's gone to shareholders and it's sitting in the bank. We need to make that work for Canadians.
Okay, we'll go to Mo there.
Happy to jump in. Small businesses are the engine to our community. They drive our economy. Small business owners grow into corporations. Penalizing companies for hiring people and employing people in our community is absolutely ludicrous. It's wrong. Keep our business taxes low. That encourages employment. Families spend money in our community, and that is what we need to do. Don't raise taxes.
Okay, so Christy, you wanted to get in?
Yes. Small businesses need the opportunity to move into green technology, and to do that, we have to give them the incentives to do that. That is holding the tax rate, but it's also giving them access to monies that they can apply for as well. Additionally, I want to mention that the single most largest impact on GDP in this country is investment in infrastructure, not corporate tax. In fact, that falls dead last in your bang for dollar for buck.
Thank you. And Don, you want to finish off?
Well, I apologize. I didn't get the orientation, obviously, so I didn't know. I thought we were going
Oh, okay, so I'll do it very quickly right now. After the 4 questions, there's 2 minutes of open debate, and whoever kind of indicates they want to jump in, I'll
Okay.
call on.
Sorry,
And there's the clock to help you.
I would have indicated.
All right.
In any event, I agree with Ms. Camusi that yes, we do need to lower the small business tax rate, and the Liberal Party is committed to lowering that tax rate from 11 to 9%. Lowering taxes, targeted lowering taxes is smart business, and that's what the Liberal Party is committed to do. If we just lower tax rates willy-nilly like the Conservative Party has been doing, or lowering taxes for the wealthiest Canadians, that doesn't work for all Canadians. The Liberal plan is about fairness, about about doing what makes sense. I can take ideas from the NDP,
And we're gonna have to
ideas
wrap it
from the
up soon.
Conservative Party,
Quick.
and if they're good ideas and they work for Canadians, we can use them. I'm a consensus builder.
All right, thank you. So the 3rd question starts with you, Don. The switch to a voluntary household survey has resulted in the loss of comparable longitudinal, long-form data that seriously impairs businesses' ability to track labor market changes and measure the effectiveness of our economic policies. Will you commit to reinstating the mandatory long-form census?
Well, not only will I commit, but the party is committed to reinstituting the long-form census. That's valuable data that communities need. Communities like we were in Stratton last night aren't getting the data they need to make the decisions on policy that will affect generations down the line. There's so much that is lost with losing the long-form census. And sure, I didn't like filling out a long-form census, but that's important data that policymakers need to make the right decisions, not making willy-nilly decisions based on ideology like my friend to the Rights Party has done over and over again in the last 10 years, and that hasn't been good for Canadians.
Okay, Mo.
Our government did away with the long-form census because it didn't make sense. That's the position that they took. They believe that that's private information, and and that's what they stood by. And I agree with them. I believe that
Okay,
Thank you.
so we've had a pretty courteous debate so far this evening, and I'd like for it to continue. So we'd like to extend the same courtesy that even the partisan supporters are extending to their candidates, so to extend it to all candidates. Thanks. Go ahead, Mo.
Thank you. A voluntary household survey is not acceptable by our party. And I stand with our party on that decision. And families don't fill it out. Some do, some don't. It's inaccurate. So let's focus on our economy. Let's get back to creating jobs for Thunder Bay and Rainy River and get on track. Job creation is what we're here for. What are we going to do to create jobs? Well, I'm going to tell you that as we move
Next
along.
round. Thank you. Okay, Christy.
Yeah, just recently reading about this very issue, the fact that once the long-term census was eradicated, we actually lost 20% of our communities, our small communities in Canada. They disappeared off the map. Their data doesn't exist. What we need to know about them in order to form federal policy and federal funding decisions is gone. That kind of information allows us to skew numbers and say things like we have surpluses and we've created jobs, when that's not necessarily the truth because we don't have the long data that we need. This government has spent time muzzling scientists, muzzling data, and the reason you do that is to create a vacuum. And you know what's great about a vacuum is you can then fill it with your own stories and your own myths. The Green Party is committed to returning to the long-form census data. We're also committing to creating transparency in government, and that means returning good government decisions to science. That means recognizing and taking corporate influence out of science decisions and peddling political influence there so that we can make good, sound policy decisions and good, sound funding and fiscal decisions to move us forward.
Thank you. John.
I had to smile revealing any, but what ESP, it has to do with that information that is so important if you're going to make decisions that are going to have an impact a year down the road, 5 years down the road, 15 years down the road. And I guess you can see that 3 of the parties are committed to bringing it back, and I'm glad to see
Okay,
that.
thank you. Okay, so we'll kick off the 2 minutes of debate, but just very quickly, as I said last debate, the rule of thumb is roughly 30 seconds. That's what I'm trying to keep it to so we can stay on track. Christy, you look like you want to go?
And once again, I'll just return to that census data is so valuable in us helping make decisions about seniors. We heard earlier in our debate tonight about senior decisions, housing decisions, infrastructure decisions. We can't make good decisions. We can't make good policy if we don't know what's going on in our own country. And I think can't emphasize that enough. The Greens really do believe in returning to what we call good government, and that means honesty, integrity, and transparency. We also believe in working across party lines, and we would convene a council of governments, which would include federal, provincial, municipal, local, First Nations, Métis, and Inuit governments in a real partnership to move this country forward.
Okay, Don?
Well, it's about good information and making good decisions, and the Liberal Party is committed to fairness in making those decisions. We need to be a partner with the provincial government and with municipal governments, and without that data, we can't make good decisions. Again, the Liberal Party is committed to bringing back the long-form census, and only that will provide the municipalities, province, and the federal government with the information to make the right decisions.
Okay, thank you. John?
You know, as I was doing research over this past year on retirement security in Thunder Bay Rainy River, I found out that 20% of seniors in Thunder Bay Rainy River either live at the poverty level or below. But that is an old number. I don't have any new numbers. And so if you're planning retirement security, if you're planning expanding CPP, if you're planning moving the retirement age back down to 65 from 67, if you're talking about $400 million injected into GIS to help those seniors, you have to know how many seniors there are. You have to know where they are.
Mo, did you want to get in?
I believe that right now in this community, our concerns are right now not the long census form. Our concerns in this room are how we're going to keep taxes low and create jobs. Thunder Bay Rainy River needs to move forward. And they can talk about long-form censuses and all that. Let's get to the real issue tonight, and that's job opportunity for our kids and our future. Thank you.
Okay. Well, actually, you're up first for the next question, which touches on that. The Aboriginal population is a largely untapped resource that should be playing a bigger role in the economic development of northwestern Ontario. Does your party have anything new to propose? Oh, I'm sorry. No, okay, sorry. I got mixed up there. Aboriginal population is a largely untapped resource that should be playing a bigger role in the economic development of northwestern Ontario. Does your party have anything new to propose in approach to the federal government's relationship with the Aboriginal population?
Thank you for the question. It's a great question. We know moving forward that the biggest job opportunity we have is the Ring of Fire. We understand that the province needs to put their infrastructure plan together that will create housing, opportunities for all people, especially the Aboriginal people, the First Nations people in that area. With skills training and education through the college, we will have the ability to provide good paying jobs for all our families. All our families. So let's get the province moving on their infrastructure plan. There are federal dollars available for this project. There will be investment into our families and communities for all our families. Thank you.
Thank you. Christy?
The first thing that we have to commit to is to implement the findings in the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. We must admit and accept the painful truth of the horrors of residential school. That means we must also commit to building a new nation-to-nation partnership based on mutual respect in which we listen. Recognizing Indigenous rights and titles, negotiating good faith to settle land claims, and moving to repeal the Indian Act, should that be the consensus of First Nations, are commitments that the Green Party are prepared to make. We also want to recognize the critical importance of defending languages, and cultures that are fast disappearing across this nation. New federal funding for culturally appropriate education in traditional languages is also another way in which we would open that communication and reach out to our First Nations and Aboriginal partners. We want to ensure access to quality public services for First Nations, Métis, and Inuit, and importantly, most importantly, adequate funding for housing, education, and healthcare, both on and off reserves. We recognize that we have a duty and responsibility as treaty persons to work equitably with our First Nation partners.
Thank you. John?
Thank you very much, and it's a very important question. I would like to just make my remarks, just talk about a couple of the things that a letter, Tom Mulcair's letter to Grand Chief Alvin Fiddler 2 weeks ago, and some of the things that he outlines. And I'd just like to share them with you because I don't want to stumble and mumble. I want to make sure that I get this all in. And of course, the very first is a true nation-to-nation relationship. The second thing that Tom talks about in his letter is within the first 100 days of taking office, an inquiry into murdered and missing Aboriginal women will take place. He talks about improving healthcare services provided by the federal government. He talks about beginning the work of closing the education funding gap, ensuring that every First Nation child has the same opportunities as every other child does in Canada. Improving essential physical infrastructure, housing, roads, drinking water, septic sewage.
And you're running over time. How long is that letter?
Well,
It looks pretty long.
It's 4 pages, but I'm just.
Maybe we could touch on it
all
in
right,
the debate then.
Okay, maybe
Don?
in the debate I'll talk about it a little bit.
Well, being the only Aboriginal person on the stage, I know a little bit about Aboriginal issues. I've actually met with the Fort Frances Chiefs yesterday, and we can't forget about the great things that are happening in our riding. Everyone's focusing on the Ring of Fire, and yeah, the Ring of Fire is a great opportunity for Ontario, and the Ontario government wants the federal government's help in building a road up there. And I've talked to prospectors and people involved in the mining industry, and they call it the Amazon of the North. But we need consultation with the First Nations. We toured New Gold's Atkinson camp yesterday, and it's an amazing partnership between Aboriginal communities and Aboriginal business, along with New Gold. They haven't even poured a bar yet, but they're pouring millions of dollars in there. There's 420 people at the camp, both Aboriginal and non-Aboriginal. There's Aboriginal groups managing the camps. Aboriginal business. I believe I can be the bridge between Aboriginal people and our community to move things forward.
Okay, John, since I cut you off in the middle of your letter, I'll let you kick off the 2 minutes of the debate.
All right, well, yeah, thank you very much. And there are some very important things that we can move forward with. The first one is implementing the UN Declaration of Rights of Indigenous Peoples. Canada is not a signatory, to our great embarrassment. And under a new government will be. Work to ensure the First Nations police are equal partners in policing. You know, Treaty 3 and NAN police are in a terrible deficit right now in terms of funding. They're funded partly also by the provincial government, but the feds are not paying their share, and so that's a problem.
And we're going to have to keep it moving.
The last thing is the social
quickly.
contract. That's why Mr. Harper's projects are not moving forward. He doesn't have a social contract with the stakeholders, and that's what a government needs to build.
Go ahead,
Increased spending has been put into Aboriginal affairs, First Nations education, on reserves. There are federal dollars available for skills and training to support First Nations people that want to create a small business. It's opportunity. It's keeping our taxes low and creating businesses for all of us. The Ring of Fire is the next boom. It must happen with everybody at the table, with consultations, but most importantly, the Liberal government provincially must get off their fannies and get the plan done.
Thank you. Christy.
Excuse me. Investment in our communities. Actually, this government committed to spending more on Canada's 150th anniversary or birthday than it did to education in Aboriginal communities in this country. Additionally, real consultation on the Ring of Fire means that we don't end up with a De Beers situation. We're right next to the richest diamond mine, one of the richest diamond mines in the world. It's a community living in a third world situation where the children can't even get education in a real school.
Because the province won't
Okay,
get.
sorry, we got to get Dawn in before, because we're almost out of that
I
time.
met with the chiefs again yesterday, and I met with health service delivery providers in Couchiching First Nation yesterday, and despite what my friend to the right from the Conservative Party says, they've been cut, and cut. There's not a lot of money coming from the federal government, but it's not about money. There's a certain pot of money provided by the federal government for everything the federal government does. What First Nations want is to be a partner in development.
We're going to have to wrap this
how,
up.
How that looks, I don't know. And my commitment is to talking with First Nations and getting them involved in the economy and getting them involved in government.
Okay, thank you. We don't have to break it up into 30 seconds. You can jump in. It's just I need to have everybody get almost approximately the same, since we're nonpartisan and equal here. So I guess we have time for one more question, and it's back around to Christy to start. Taxes have become extraordinarily complicated and cost Canadian business billions to comply with. What steps will your party take to simplify the tax system?
Well, as we reiterated before, what we're interested in is reducing the small business tax rate to 9%, holding it there for small businesses. The next piece of that, though, is raising the large corporation tax rate, and that's to 19%. And the reason is because the money that has been given to large corporations has not been reinvested in this community or any other community. And in order to hold them accountable, we are able to incentivize their ability to move into green technology. And I'll tell you what's happened with us is that we've ended up at the bottom of the heap when it comes to investment, R&D, and investment in green technology. We currently, in investment in research and development, are sitting 18th out of OECD nations. We are also sitting 11th in investment in green technology. Our commitment to attacking climate change also includes a tax structure that will help bring the revenues in, including our carbon fee and dividend, that will pay for our programs and will make sense to Canadians.
Thank you. John.
I think everyone in this room was amazed and disappointed, I think, when we heard Justin Trudeau talk about small business people being tax cheats. I think everybody remembers that. And I think that's the sort of attitude that we have to, that we must get rid of. And so we too are committing to 2 percentage points to 9% for small businesses within the first 2 years. And then as the economy permits, continue to do that. We know it can be done, and we know it can be beneficial because it's happened in Manitoba. Manitoba small business rate is actually 0% now. We know we can get there. And I, quite frankly, don't think that small business owners and mom and pop operations are tax cheats. But combine that with corporate tax increases, and you heard us briefly, both Christy and I, talk about $680 billion in dead money that is sitting in bank accounts of corporations. That money is mostly subsidies from the federal government over the
Okay,
years.
and we're going to move on.
And it needs to be used for the benefit of all Canadians.
Okay, thank you. Don?
Well, talking about tax policy and the NDP, the NDP is going to continue the government or the Conservative government's universal child care benefit, which isn't income tested. I have a friend who's a doctor and his wife's a lawyer, and they're getting big checks every month. Is that the tax policy we want to continue with? And that's the tax policy of the Conservatives. The NDP, if you look at their tax policy, they're following along on a lot of the same tax policy the Conservatives are doing. That's what we should not be doing. Justin Trudeau and the Liberal Party is committed to fairness, taxing the top 1% to make sure our middle class pays less taxes. I've already mentioned reducing the taxes, small business tax rate from 11% to 9%, and that'll help foster growth in small business. And small business, as we all know, create jobs here in Thunder Bay.
Thank you. Mo.
1.3 million net new jobs. 1.3 million net new jobs committed by 2020. small business tax decrease from 11 to 9%. Universal child tax credits paid directly to you, to family members, so they can stay at home, raise their children, and help run the small business. Our government is committed to ensuring that small businesses continue to get looked after. We keep the taxes low, we look after our communities, we create jobs, and we stay the track. Thank you.
Okay, so this will be our final debate portion of the evening, so I'll give you a little leeway. You know, like I said, people can jump in. I just want to make sure everybody gets roughly the same amount of time. So, Christy, you had your hand up, so you go ahead.
So a latest Ipsos poll tells us that 85% of Canadians support an increase in the large corporate income tax. That's because we need the dollars to be produced for spending on infrastructure. Infrastructure dollars spent create $1.43 of GDP for every dollar we spend. They also are predicted over the next 5 years to create 9.4 jobs per $1 million spent. That boosts our employment between 81 and 88,000. If you really want to create jobs, you need to invest in your communities. As I said before, even the conservative budget from 2009 recognized that investment in infrastructure and housing was the single largest factor in increasing GDP, not lowering corporate tax rates.
John?
It's always interesting because I've heard Mr. Harper talk about 1.2 or 1.3 million net new jobs. He talks about it all the time. In fact, since 2008, there are 200,000 fewer jobs in this country since 2008. So I don't even know how he figures out net new jobs. No one's ever actually asked him, I guess. But we have fewer jobs now than we did in 2008. And the quality of the new jobs that are happening are at a 25-year low in terms of pay, in terms of benefits, and you know, fewer benefits, less pay, and our, you know, I will say that our economy does remain fragile. We don't know what's going to happen to oil and oil prices, and whether we like it or not, we do depend for a lot of our GDP from energy products, and so. You know,
Don, you can jump in at some point.
Speaking of jobs and entrepreneurs and growing business here in Northwestern Ontario, I've had the opportunity to meet with several young entrepreneurs and several very successful business people here in Thunder Bay that have been trying to get help from our current MP here in Thunder Bay and haven't gotten the help. And they don't want money from the federal government. They just want the doors open in Ottawa. And they said they've repeatedly sent him emails, went to his office and tried to get meetings. That's not what our MP should be doing. Ignoring people who are willing to spend money and invest in our mills here, invest in our businesses, and our MP should be able to open those doors in Ottawa.
Mo, you want to get in?
Yeah, I do. Look to Kenora. Greg Rickford has proved that a Conservative can be elected. Not only can a Conservative be elected, but they have been extremely generous with Thunder Bay not having a sitting MP. Your MP that sits now has voted against everything, every good initiative for this community. Every good initiative. The long gun registry, the universal child tax credit, small business tax credit. He's opposed to all these things. Lower taxes create jobs. Deficit spending kills jobs. Promises, 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 and not knowing how to pay for them it's mind-boggling.
All right, John, you want to
Yeah, Ms. Kamuzi, with all due respect, your logic defies anything that I can even try to comprehend. First of all, you know, you talk about your last night you said that Thunder Bay has received more than any other northern community.
Because of Greg
and
Rickford.
so, not because of Greg Rickford.
Minister Greg Rickford.
And so, you know, and I don't even know what your long gun registry comment made.
Bill
It
C-40
made no sense to,
Bill-
that made
Bill-
no sense to me at all.
Bill C-42,
Yeah.
John, you voted against. All of us are hunters and anglers. There's some of us in this room. And you voted against our way of life and everything that's important to us. Bill C-42, the common sense firearms legislation. Don't be fooled. Your NDP representative did not bring money to Thunder Bay Rainy River. It was the minister, Greg Rickford, that did that, and the federal government. That's
Morning.
where you got Highway 1117, the cyclotron money, and there's more. There's more money at a government level.
Okay,
But
so
you need
Don,
an MP that
Don,
can
you
get
better
that.
jump in there.
I think the provincial government has poured far more money into the four-laning of the highway between Thunder Bay and Riverbank. And right before this election, your minister came out and made a small announcement for a small section. Your government has been
To me-
absent in this riding
To me, that
for
section,
far too long.
that
and
section protects our families and keeps them safe. My father was killed on Highway 1117, so this is not a joke to me. Infrastructure dollars to the highway to make sure that we're connected properly to other sectors
Ms.
will
Camus-
encourage job opportunities.
Ms. Camusi, it's not a joke. It's very
And
serious.
small business
I have a
opportunities.
party favor on my arm from our northern highways. I was in a bad accident too, and I feel bad for your loss. But
Any money
let's-
that's come to this community has been at the
let's be
benefit of the
ser-
federal government and Greg.
I'm gonna
Okay,
I'm gonna
so
respectfully
I think
disagree with you.
that's, your arguments have been stated. So we're gonna move to closing statements now, and we'll do them in the reverse order of what we had the opening statements. So Mo, you'll start.
Bear with me. I've got them. I'm all fired up.
That was a good final debate.
Hey, that was good. I enjoyed that. This election, you have a choice of which government is best to manage and protect the fragile Canadian economy. You can stick the course with Stephen Harper, with low tax plan that creates jobs and keep our country safe, or you can run deficits. It amazes me that we can say that we can run a deficit responsibly. I don't know what small business does. Or we can make promises after promises without knowing how to pay for them. We need an MP who can be your voice in Ottawa, who can bring infrastructure dollars, federal dollars to this community that are long overdue. Thanks to Greg Rickford in Kenora, that we've benefited from some part of that. There is more money at a federal level. I am the next choice. I am the only person that can bring more opportunity to this community by staying the track with low taxes, encouraging businesses to prosper, looking after families with a universal tax credit, not by increasing taxes and running deficits.
Okay, good. Thanks.
Thank you.
Don.
I'm going to disagree with my friend to the right and say that staying the course is disastrous. We've had 10 years of Harper Conservative rule, and it hasn't been good for Northwestern Ontario. In my opening remarks, I said that the region must reinvent itself. The Liberal Party's infrastructure program is meant to kickstart private sector investment. One of the key opportunities lie in our far north and in the north of Ontario. As an Aboriginal lawyer, I have the skills and contacts to help move forward the development in the far north and throughout the region. The First Nation people of Northwestern Ontario, like I said, and like everyone else, want a better life for themselves and their families, like everyone does in the region. They want to make sure that the environmental impacts are minimized, and they want to make sure those things are done right. The federal government has an incredibly important role in this, a role the Conservatives have clearly overlooked and abandoned. I'm ready to roll up my sleeves and begin the process of bringing all parties together and get the necessary agreements in place to make sure we can do these developments and do these developments responsibly. Under the Conservatives, we've lost a decade. The NDP, we've had a member here for 8 years and he hasn't done anything in that regard. We can have a brighter future, but I need your help.
Okay, John.
I think it's interesting when you're an opposition MP, when you're in the official opposition, and not in government. The kind of work that you do is not always about money. Let me just leave you with this one example, and Bruce will probably agree with me that's true. In 2014, last year, the industry minister and the department and the government decided that rural Canada didn't need the new spectrum for broadband, and that it should go to large urban centers. It should go to Vancouver and Calgary and Edmonton and Toronto and Montreal. That's where the spectrum auction should be held. That's where it should go. But through, and you know we have a number of NDP MPs in Northern Ontario, so our Northern Ontario caucus, along with many municipalities in Northern Ontario, approached the minister and talked to the minister and said, you can't do this. This isn't right. This is not good for rural Canada. Eventually, he and Industry Canada backed down, and we did not lose that broadband. So it's not just about how much money came to Thunder
So
Bay.
just
And by the way,
wrap
I'm
up
very
there
proud that
quickly
so much
because
money came to Thunder Bay.
we're out of time
But
there.
it's about the other kind of work that we do.
Okay, thank you. Christy?
Well, I'm glad Mr. Rusnak mentioned the environment. No one else has tonight. We cannot uncouple the climate change from the economy any longer. Both the Globe and Mail and many other outlets agree that it not only affects our economy, our economic costs, it affects our business opportunities, and it affects our pensions as well. It is the single greatest challenge we will face, but it is also the single greatest opportunity. And we need to empower small businesses, medium-sized businesses, to be able to innovate and meet that challenge. We do have a plan to do that. Small businesses generate 80% of the jobs in this economy. We have a federally funded $1 billion proposed green energy commercial